We are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the War of Ideas. Today, obviously, you all know the topic. We are talking about Biden's presidency. We just started, so we don't have a lot of people in here yet, per our usual arrangement, but I trust that will change soon. I wanted to talk about this because while there's a lot in the news, I can't think of anything specific. And it's been, about 9 to 10 months since Biden first took office. I figured this was a good time to reevaluate and check in on everybody, see what they thought. So that's what we're talking about today. Sorry I haven't been as consistent with the shows these last few weeks. Very busy. But I'm glad I've been able to get in today and engage in this discussion. So, I don't know which people are still at their mics, so if anybody is actually listening to this, like Doubts to Lebowski or even Travis, please hop in. If not, then I can give a little spiel at the beginning. Oh, Dan, my savior. Oh, okay, no, there's Doubts. Okay, there's Doubts too. So, as you heard, the topic is basically Biden's presidency and your general thoughts about how it's been going so far. If you're happy with it, if you're disappointed, if it's what you expected, just let me know what you're thinking. Doubts, you were here first, and then we'll go to Dan.
Yeah, I haven't been paying super close attention lately. I've been sick, but I remember the first couple days when he did all of the executive orders and stuff. Most of those executive orders I agreed with.
Yeah. What about the
Looking back,
which ones? Do you remember any?
I actually don't remember any offhand.
Fair
I'm
enough.
going to
It's
be
been 10
mostly
months.
listening and forming an opinion as I go here.
Yeah, fair enough. I only remember one specifically, and it was the Keystone Pipeline. What did you think about that one? If you even remember.
Oh man.
It was the pipeline between Canada and America. It was larger. It was more secure, allegedly, according to the people who wanted it to go through. It was more secure and environmentally friendly than trucks, and it would make America and Canada more energy independent from Russia and the Middle East. That's what all the Trumpy people said. And he turned that over pretty quick. And I think his reasons were environmental and to avoid stomping on native lands. So I was wondering if you remember that. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but that's the only one I can remember. So, and you brought up the initial orders.
He nixed the pipeline, or he affirmed. I think he nixed it, right?
He nixed it. Yeah. It was going through, and then he's
Yeah.
like, actually no,
Yeah.
because executive orders could be crazy. Dal, if you don't have anything, that's fine too. I just wanted to make sure you don't get talked over.
I think the only thing I could say about the pipeline is that I get it. I think we should be moving away from fossil fuels, but I also think that you have to invest. You can't just not do the pipeline and then also half-ass the new Green Deal or whatever is kind of a marketing gimmick, it seems like, anyway. Or maybe something to at least when I was looking at it, it didn't seem to make a lot of sense. And I know that Biden and a lot of the left is very much pro New Green Deal.
Yeah, that's how he campaigned, but he's mouthed up platitudes to renewable energy, but I'm not aware of him really trying to make the Green New Deal happen, which I know probably has disappointed some of the people on his left flank. Dan, I was wondering what you thought about the Biden presidency, if you were disappointed or whether you were pleasantly surprised. What do you think? How do you think he's been doing?
One of the things that did pleasantly surprise me, because my support for Biden was Trump can't be in office. The Republican Party
You and literally everybody else.
Yeah, the Republican Party has literally failed, and at this point, we just need a functioning government, a functioning executive branch that is literally going to try to make legislation rather than just pass executive order after executive order.
Wait, the executive is going to try to make legislation?
The executive branch does lead in legislation, especially in the
Oh,
two-party
okay.
system.
Sorry, I see what you mean now. Okay, that's
Yeah,
more obvious. Yeah,
yeah.
keep going.
One of the things, so I was surprised. One of the things that I'm surprised is, for example, a part of the infrastructure plan, the idea of making pre-K a thing that the state provides, pre-college to associates. These are things that for me are surprising, things that I stand behind, and things that I care about. I think one of Biden's biggest failures and the Biden administration's failures is the lack of ability to unify the Democratic Party, the lack of ability to, I mean, listen, before you can even begin unifying with the opposition, is unify within yourselves. You see many roadblocks to legislation just because of two different senators, Joe Manchin, Christian Sinema. These are already problematic, and I think the Biden administration has failed on that front. Another
Yeah,
place that have been, huh?
no, I said, yeah, I agree. I mean, from your perspective, I imagine that's quite frustrating. But
Yeah,
Manchin and Sinema are
it's
very
very
interesting.
frustrating.
I mean, it's not just two; it's like 52, like obviously. But I know what you mean. And Manchin and Sinema are very interesting. But yeah, there's no leadership from the top trying to whip people into shape there.
But at the same time, right? I don't know. I wouldn't use the words "whip into shape" as the
Well,
president's job isn't to whip anyone to shape.
well,
It's rather job
yeah,
to garner
sure.
support, to convince, to um, many different issues. I think that the Biden presidency is, and it's important to recognize that this has been going on for a while. The election of the president is the election of a party. I think in the United States, we very much forget that we're not actually electing presidents anymore. We're electing parties. We have this pseudo parliamentary system where instead of voting for the parties and then they individually assign within the parliament, we're voting for the party leader to sit in the executive branch and to stonewall and
Mm.
push. So when we recognize that we're not voting for Joe Biden, we're voting for the Democratic Party. We're voting for those who sit in New York and Albany. We're voting for all the people who are in charge of the Democratic Party in the same way that when you vote for Trump, you're voting for Mitch McConnell. Um, I think one of my biggest overall, I think that there are specific challenges ahead, and I think the Biden presidency is not out on the count yet. There's still time. There's still a timer ticking down, and so far, I think it's competent, and that's as much as I can say about it.
Okay. So I'm gonna play devil's advocate with you a bit here, but before I have a question, and again, anything I say, if anybody wants to jump in, like please go right ahead. You said that you were surprised that Biden was like trying to pass an infrastructure bill. To me, that's kind of what I expected. Like I was kind of dubious that he would ever go like full progressive and try to push something like the Green New Deal. But just a general like massive spending on uh, quote unquote infrastructure like education and stuff like that. I kind of expected that. Why did that surprise you? Did you expect him to be more moderate once he got into office? Or I guess what was your expectation?
Generally that's the trend. But I expected him. I didn't expect that the infrastructure deal would include internet as a part
Mm.
of the infrastructure, include cell phone towers. These are, whether
That,
we like it or not, these are specific steps taken
that's
forward
actually, yeah.
to create a new deal, to move the country forward. Like we started with the Keystone Pipeline. I was really happy they canceled that. We
Why is
cannot
that?
keep promising constituents jobs of the past. If we look at a modern economy, if we want this country to remain a modern country, want wages to remain high, we want to be in the forefront of science, make sure that companies want to come here and invest here. Investing in oil, investing in coal, investing in gas is equivalent to buying a horse and carriage at the end of the 19th century. But we need to realize that the future is in electric, in solar, in
Mm.
thermal, in water, in hydro, in nuclear. It's not in gas, it's not in oil. And the dependence, and this is where the infrastructure plan is great. Expand the power grid, make sure there's electric charging stations. It is a move forward, and the Keystone, and of course, they did offer legislation, but there is stonewalling, and there is, of course, this congressional divide, so not letting anything happen.
So I guess my question here, I'm gonna play devil's advocate because we obviously come from different places, but I don't usually argue in these. I usually just present arguments. What would you say to those who like just point at like high gas prices? Like I tend to agree. I would like to move to more renewable stuff. Nuclear is tends to be my favorite. Um, but like oil and natural gas is better than coal, and we still have to buy stuff the argument from the right would be that all that did was basically make oil transport less secure because it comes in on trucks, and we had to pay Russia and the Middle East to get it instead of trading with our neighbors. So I guess my question would be for you is that at what point do you push off the future for the practicality of the present? And do you think that there is a trade-off there? Do you think, I guess that would be the question.
I think the trade-off there is entirely selfish, and the trade-off is, do I want to get reelected or not? If I want to get reelected or not, let me lower gas prices. Let me lower anything that people are currently spending on. But if I actually care about the benefit of the country, if I actually care about what we're gonna look like in 50 years, right? Me caring about oil, gas, and coal, like I said, it's like me buying an investment for my son, a horse and carriage at the late 19th century, so he can start his horse and carriage business.
Do you think that canceling the Keystone Pipeline made us like a more modern and strong economy that's more likely to move forward to alternative energy?
I think that the United States economy is already entirely based off of selling IP and information.
Yeah.
And what we actually need is to garner international friendships and try to create international laws. Like one of the things that I really like that the Biden administration has done is push for a 15% minimum corporate tax rate anywhere in the Western world.
How do you think that's going to work?
Huh?
See, I heard that, and my first thought is like, how in the hell is that going to be enforced? I
think that one of the biggest failures, and this is something that is found, I think, in 1980s politics, is the weakening of the UN and the International Congress. Post World War II, the UN, NATO, all these things, they were supposed to become a world effort at maintaining peace. And what has happened is that not only have those institutions been delegitimized, they've been stripped away from their power. The United States holds that power. The U.S. became the police of the world. The U.S. kind of starts running and making decisions for what's going to go on. We need to reestablish an international community. That's the way to do it.
All right. Very, very interesting thoughts. We have a couple new people in here. Andy, I want you to tell me what you think of Biden's presidency. If you were disappointed, if you were impressed. Dan even made the claim that Biden's presidency is best characterized as competent, which is, I think, a good question to start posing to people. Do you think Biden has been competent thus far? Lay it on us. Give us your takes. Andy.
Yes. I would say that from what little I've known, it doesn't seem like there's too much cause for concern this time around. Normally, or at least this is what was established from 2016 onwards, you'd hear all kinds of stuff even if you didn't keep in touch with the news. Trump and all of it. And, all the time it was, whatever side you were on, there was always some kind of big upset. But now it doesn't really seem to be that so much. It seems to have quieted just a little bit.
I actually agree. I think our news cycle has gotten a lot quieter and a lot more calm. There's three things I would bring up, and I just want to see how the room responds, and we'll get around because there's a lot of people in here now. I think that the stuff on the border that's been pretty crazy. More than ever happened in the last 4 years. His handling of everything in Afghanistan, and the state of the economy right now with our inflation and unemployment, and our massive labor shortage. Those seem like pretty big issues, and I mean maybe you guys like some of these for some reasons. I've heard arguments that all these are good actually. But I don't think that those can be kind of swept under the rug. I think you guys are gonna have to address that, and we'll get back around to everybody. But I just want to put that out there as we head around the room. Prax Pradium with the purple anime devil icon. If I'm seeing it right, you're up to bat, man. What do you think about Biden's presidency so far? Give us your takes. Love to hear them.
I'm mostly disappointed in it, but I take that stand towards like pretty much every fucking president.
Fair enough, mate. It's politics after all. What were you expecting, I guess? Because in order to be disappointed, your standards had to have been higher than the reality. So where were your standards, and how did he disappoint them?
No, you bring a good point. Maybe disappointed isn't the right word, but not satisfied.
All right. Well, then why aren't you satisfied? Tell us why you're upset.
Oh boy.
No, it's all right. Right.
So I can talk about the positives, but okay, why am I upset?
You talk about positives too.
Well,
Talk about whatever you want, man.
Well, I'm upset because like all the other establishment politicians, yeah, he's serving mostly corporate interests instead of the interests of the American people, right?
Sure.
And I mean, and I even agree with like some of the stuff you mentioned. Is it directly caused by like the current administration or not? Well, yeah, that's probably not true. I mean, Trump's probably a factor in the things you mentioned as well. Trump and Biden. But yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, please, and then we'll go to secondary.
I wanted to talk about the Afghanistan, the inflation. I think that when we look at the failures of Afghanistan, this is a failure since the early 2000s. This is a foreign policy failure on a massive scale.
Yeah, that's what I've been. Yeah, that's usually the argument.
Yeah. And I think Biden obviously the generals messed up again. Putting this straight on, I think these are the same military strategists that worked under Trump, who even worked under Obama, right? Military is not really an elected body, so it's hard to kind of put the onus there. And we look at inflation, we look at economic problems the U.S. is currently facing. This is really due to a failure in a response to COVID, an appropriate response to COVID. Economy generally takes a while to catch up with the effects of what happened. People are going back into the businesses, people are trying to buy things. Supply chains don't exist that existed pre-COVID. Places like India and Taiwan are still suffering and still don't have supply chains necessary to accommodate the type of demand that we're seeing, which is we're seeing the prices shoot up.
So if it's just COVID, maybe the Afghanistan thing is true. I also tend to be kind of isolationist. I would say that it's a rather royal fuck up when you pull out your soldiers before you pull out your civilians. I don't really know who's responsible for that, but sure, let's say we can spread the onus around. I guess my question would be, if COVID is the real culprit of the economic problems, and obviously you say that COVID is pretty widely dispersed across the country, why there's like...
In the world.
Yeah, sure, it's everywhere. But there's very massive unemployment disparities between states that are less restrictive and states that are more restrictive in terms of unemployment. Less restrictive states like Florida tend to have much lower unemployment, while more restrictive states tend to have much higher unemployment. And so if COVID is a common variable and restrictive government measures is the independent variable, wouldn't that lead us to believe that that's what's causing the unemployment problems rather than, COVID itself? Or am I missing something here?
The unemployment problems are, we also have to look at the states that, for example, New York State, right? And you look at the ports. A lot of people who work, ports aren't hiring, for example. So you have tons of jobs open there. Or in some ports aren't hiring, so a lot of people who aren't working, there's demand in other jobs. People who work in ports aren't going to all of a sudden now try to work at the Amazon warehouse or try to work at the deli down the street. People's jobs are a part of their identity, it's a part of their skill set, it's part of their occupation. You're not going to expect a doctor to go also work at McDonald's if he loses his job. Ports are underperforming. Income, trade routes, logistical supply chains aren't operating the same capacity they used to. And this is where I think you're seeing a lot of these unemployment numbers coming from.
All right. Okay. I'm gonna actually cut over to Doolittle real quick, and then we'll go to secondary. Secondary, I'm sorry, I didn't forget about you. I still love you, but I think Doolittle's gonna add a new wrinkle here that I'd like to hear, if I know Doolittle at all.
I'm not sure I have a new wrinkle here. I mean, the whole thing's been a shit show.
That's a hey,
like, for
Doolittle.
example,
Doolittle. That's a
he
new wrinkle for
appointed
this
a labor-
conversation.
Yeah,
that
he
claim is
appointed
dead.
a commerce secretary that, in the middle of this supply chain massive issue, has decided that he's going to take paternity leave, and
Right,
and
yeah, I
nobody's
heard about
at
that.
the helm. He assigned Kamala Harris to be the border czar, and she hasn't even shown up to the border even one time. Like, it's just a complete absence of leadership.
For,
I mean,
yeah.
you know, look at how the pullout from Afghanistan happened. Biden took such a soft stance that the freaking Taliban were able to do whatever the hell they want. Like, how do you give away all that weaponry and equipment to a foreign adversary? Like, the guys, the buck stops at the president. I mean, like, yeah, sure, it was a foreign policy debacle for across 3 different presidents before Biden, but when there were debacles, we blamed the commander-in-chief every time, and Biden doesn't get to escape.
You're right. He doesn't get to escape.
He's the freaking commander-in-chief.
It's an American thing. It's been America for the past 20 years. You're right. He's a part of it. 100%. I agree.
Yeah, no, not a part of it. He's in charge of it. He's in charge of it. The person, if something falls apart that badly, the guy at the top is at fault. The person at the top gets credit when things go great, and the person at the top gets blamed when things go absolutely ridiculously horribly, like the Afghanistan withdrawal did.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think the guy gets a pass on anything.
Secondary. You hopped in here a while ago. I want to get your take. What do you think about the whole Biden thing? There's another wrinkle that we haven't talked about yet is his foreign policy towards nations like China. Not a lot of big stuff has come out of that yet, but
still 70,000 fentanyl deaths this year from fentanyl imported from China. What is he doing about it?
Oh yeah, that's right. Can't forget about those. But it's one of the most stark differences between him and Trump is their attitude towards China. So I think that's another thing to throw in the ring. So secondary, I'll let you take first crack at it. Then I think I'm gonna hop over to Lebowski.
Well, I know that he's practically Obama's 3rd term, and when Obama left, they were actively trying to continue destabilizing the Middle East by killing Bashar al-Assad, and Obama lost a lot of presidential credibility when he set a red line and didn't act on it when he was challenged. That's when Putin took the initiative to assert himself in the Middle East. And so far, he hasn't picked that mantle back up yet to continue totally destabilizing the Middle East. If he continues that and doesn't try to just force democracy down people's throat that don't want it, he may not be too bad in the future.
I kind of like the point that you made that we try to force the democracy down people's throats. I mean, here in the West, we kind of have this conceit that everybody across the world actually shares our values. They just don't know it yet, and I don't think that's right. And I think that phrase that you used right there is very telling to that point that we try to do that. So I'm kind of happy that we got out of Afghanistan. I think the way that it was handled was very horrible, but it kind of plays into that. We're gonna go Lebowski and then Milos. What do you think about the Biden presidency? Disappointed? Impressed? Are you surprised? What do you think? What do you think about all the? It's not in the news very much. There's not as many uproarious tweets, but there is a lot going on. So I want to get your take here. Lebowski going once, going twice. Sold, but not to you. Okay.
Yeah, you're a very good host, by the way. Honestly.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate that. I do my best. Milos, I feel like you're just trying to get the mic next. That's what I got from that. Milos, your turn, and then if not, then we'll go somewhere else. Milos going once, twice, no. Oh no, there he is.
Hey,
Yeah.
I'll tune in a second. I'm driving and it's raining so hard that I can barely hear what you guys are talking. But I'll be online in a few minutes and then I'll tune in. But for now, I'm just driving and I'll be with you in a moment.
Yeah, sounds great, man. Just whenever you get to a spot you can talk, just pipe up and I'll let you in. You got priority. All right, so I'm gonna bring in some of my takes real quick, just so people can respond to them. Dan kind of hopped out, which is a bit disappointing, but I don't know. The inflation is really what I want to talk about. Basically, because by essentially, what I thought was going to happen is what I thought was very similar to what happened with Obama, which is he bounced off the 2008 debt crisis, and then because they were just coming out of recession, the economy was bound to improve just naturally, it had to, and then so he would get to ride the benefits of that, because none of his spending policies or his economic policies could really change the trend, just slow it down. And I thought that's what was going to happen with Biden, because, COVID was a completely artificial coma. And then after we all decided to end the lockdowns, after he was handed a working vaccine, mostly working vaccine, you'd think that, okay, the economy's going to bounce back. I thought it was literally just going to be Obama term 3 in that way as well. But it's not. And inflation has come back, and we've had massive labor shortages. And I'm just honestly... that's the thing that's most surprising to me, is what's happened on the economic front. And I usually don't like it when people place the whole weight of the economy on the president, because it's just one man, but he really has been running with the stimulus stuff. He really has been running with making people scared of each other and not wanting to go to work because of the COVID. So I was kind of wondering what you guys thought about Biden's handling of the economy. Dan made some points about how it's mostly about supply chains and not really about economic policy. I was wondering what you guys thought about that. I'm just going to throw it over to Dao real quick. Where do you think we're going economically? Even the Fed, they were talking about how the inflation was transitory, and they've kind of slowly started to say that no, this is actually kind of a big deal and we should probably raise interest rates again. So when the Fed starts admitting that there might be an inflationary problem, that's usually when you should get worried. But, again, like Dan said, maybe this is all artificial because of the virus. So, Dao, what do you think about Biden on the economy recently? Where do you think we're headed?
It's going to sound... Well, basically, when Trump was being elected... I had a big hate boner for his tax plan.
Wait, hold on. Oh, what? You have to say that phrase again.
Hate boner? Is that what you were after?
I have never heard that before. That is the weird. Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Back in 2016, when everyone was on the internet arguing about who's better, I was very much on anti-everybody's team. I was not liking anyone. And my biggest thing against Trump was his tax plan, because the way that he had it set up was he was going to basically give the biggest tax breaks that I think, as far as I'm aware, that we've ever seen, just about, more than Reagan ever gave, and all of these things. And in my opinion, that was always setting us up for inflation, because the only way we're going to have more money in the system if we're not taking it out, because the way national economics or global economics work like that is you're printing off money and putting it in the system, and then using taxes to take it out of the system, and that should all be controlled by the Fed. But instead, we kind of just hacked off a bunch of the taxes and then reinstated them a few years later, or got close to it. And so we have the Fed just trying their best to deal with that. But I don't. I think if I was to blame anyone, I would blame the tax plan that led us here, and then maybe the quick reversal from that previous tax plan.
That's very interesting. I have not heard that before. I mean, yeah, if you're taking less money out of the economy, technically, then there's still more dollars in circulation, and that's essentially what inflation is: more dollars chasing too few goods. But I don't know. It's weird we didn't see inflation though, because if that policy was enacted, he gave really big tax cuts to the top, and I mean he tax cut everybody, but he gave the biggest ones to the top. He gave them the most relief, so that's true. Why do you think we hadn't seen it? And then just when Biden started, blowing out the stimulus, and all those supply chains started minimizing goods, like that makes sense to me. More money is being printed off in the terms of stimulus, and there's less goods to chase because of unemployment and supply chain issues. That makes sense to me as a sense of employment. Why should I believe that it was actually the tax plans from 5 years ago? Because I think the logic makes sense. I'm just not sure why it's a better theory than what's going on right now with Biden.
I really think it's a combination. The fact that we, for the, a little bit, around 4 years, we had this almost like really close to zero taxes or really low tax rate.
Well,
and then
close to zero is a bit of a stretch, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's just a ridiculously low tax rate in comparison to our history. And then following that up with COVID and lockdowns and all that. I think it was all working together. It's not really two separate theories.
That's usually how it works in the economy. Like it's very Hayek had this, basically hated the idea, modern monetary theory, that the economy was like an engine that we understood. And it's more like this like organism. And so I think that kind of applies here. When we try to just say this factor caused this reaction, I think that's folly. So I think that's right. I think it's always a combination. So there's something to that.
Yeah.
Doolittle, what do you think about that, about Biden's economic policy? And then we'll jump back up to Andy and down back to Pax. And then maybe check on Lebowski.
So are you talking about fiscal policy?
Yeah, obviously, like you've seen the gas price memes in California, where I used to be. When I left, like right about now, they're up to like $7 or something crazy.
It's $5.
Oh, is it $5? I saw a meme, but memes aren't really a great reliable source of news.
It's $7.
Huh?
So the fiscal policy is, Biden's, let's just say Biden's his campaign promise to build back better, is, he wants to get this infrastructure spending done, which is, there's $1 trillion something that both sides want, and he's going for $3.5 trillion. That's on top of the federal budget.
Yeah.
It's already massively in deficit. What do we have now? $24 trillion in debt. Just the interest on the debt is pretty crushing. The Federal Reserve is still engaged in pretty loose, easy monetary policy, and they haven't started tapering it. They're buying all kinds of assets, not just treasuries like they used to, and so money is just getting pumped into every corner of the economy.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that that there's inflation. 30% of all the money that's been printed has been printed in the last year. So
that would cause some inflation, wouldn't it?
Shouldn't we expect 30% inflation?
I don't disagree.
Stimulus, infrastructure spending, simultaneous with stimulating monetary policy. When you already have labor shortages, it's a certain combination that just like we knew that when they did the CARES Act in the first place, with everybody quitting work simultaneously due to the COVID, they knew that wasn't going to cause inflation, and that they were going to have to pull it back as soon as people got back to work, and they didn't pull it back, and they're doubling down on the stimulus. So this is not something that's unforeseen. there's a lot of people that have foreseen this and they have positioned themselves appropriately, myself included. I've seen this coming for, before Trump. I'm actually a little surprised we didn't see as much inflation under Trump as we did. But there still was a pretty substantial amount of inflation. I mean, it was running over 3% the whole time Trump was in office, and it just didn't. It didn't manifest itself as big as it is now. Like last month was 5%. Inflation was 5%. So that's you annualize that. That's like 60% annualized. But I don't think it's going to run that high at all.
Right, and I know.
But you have to realize there's expectations, and there's also there's the real thing that's happening, and then there's what people expect to happen next. And when people expect more inflation, then there's going to be more inflation because you bake all that into your contracts.
Sure. Yeah, and people have been touting wage growth, but the inflation is outpacing wage growth. So that's also a big side effect. Like we think about like inflation as like this kind of abstract thing that only matters after you get to Venezuela level, but any amount of inflation is devaluing people's wages, and more importantly, is devaluing people's savings. And it's not good. No matter where it's coming from, it's not good. But I can't really disagree with your logic.
The thing is, in America, most people aren't savers; they're net debtors. So inflation is actually anyone that has a mortgage or $100,000 in student loans. This is how you wipe out student loans. You just make the dollar worthless.
It was a big brain strategy all along. The Dems just wanted to get rid of student loans, so they decided to blow out inflation. It's master plan. They're playing 4D chess.
Well, I think there's a philosophical razor. Don't attribute to evil master plans.
Yeah. No, that's
playing with stupidity.
Right. Yes. Jokes are jokes. We like to joke.
Yeah. I don't think at this point with $24 trillion in national debt. And most of that is owed to China. I don't think there's anything to do but inflation to save ourselves.
So wait,
it's going to be painful. It's going to be painful for a couple of years, one way or another.
Wait, are you coming out in favor? Because this is a hot take. Inflation is good, actually, long term.
Yeah, it's called the Year of Jubilee. Too bad Dan's not here to talk about the Year of Jubilee.
All right. Well, hopefully he'll pop back in.
This is something that happens cyclically throughout human history.
Right.
And it's not. It's calling it good. It's kind of necessary. If you have fiat currency, this is just part of the natural life cycle of every fiat currency.
Sure. Very interesting. Starwalk. I want to get your take. Biden's presidency, if you were surprised, disappointed, maybe you're even impressed. I don't know. I want to know what you think about how he's been doing. Dan called him competent. Doolittle called him a shit show. We got a lot of different. We're all across the spectrum here. So I want to get your take. What do you think? How do you think he's been doing?
I don't live in America. I'm not really familiar with much of.
Outsider's perspective.
Actually,
it makes me
I'm not
want your
familiar
opinion.
with much of what he's actually achieved, but from what I've seen of him, he doesn't look particularly competent. He looks like he's losing it.
Well, you heard it here first. That has been a thing that's been getting kind of harder and harder to ignore. Is just how he is health wise. It looks very strange. So I actually, more than anything, I feel kind of bad. So that has been a thing to watch. Are you aware of like any policies or just what you've seen on TV? And like no shame.
I'm aware about the withdrawal from Afghanistan. That's about it. Which I thought was a disaster. By
yeah. I was wanting your 5-second take on that. All right. Well, Mace, if you got anything else, feel free to chime in whenever you want. But I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't have anything. So pop in if you have anything else. For now, though, I'm gonna go to Game Over, and then we're gonna hop over to John Boy. But Game Over first. What do you think about Biden's presidency? You've been listening. You know what we're talking about. How you feel? What you thinking?
Oh, you're saying me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm also not from America. I agree with Mace. I think Afghanistan was a joke. Them retreating like that, not talking to their allies and all of that was just nonsense. And I'm also just aware of the, the most common things that you see of him speaking gibberish out of nowhere, not being able to read his own script, stuff like that. I'm not sure. I think he's just a puppet, really. I don't see how he can't. I don't see how he can be anything but a puppet, honestly.
Puppet for who do you think? That's the question.
No, I don't. I have no idea. I don't think it matters. For whoever, for his own party, for whatever. I think he's a shell of a man. Is what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really disagree.
He's a puppet for the deep state.
The deep state.
And corporate interests, of course.
There's the thing about that. The thing about the deep state thing is I would believe it if it weren't for the Afghanistan thing. Because we know, like, literally everybody was telling Joe Biden not to pull out. Like, but he did anyway, and that was one of the most shocking things of his presidency. And we talked about this at the time. It was like, how did this guy stand up to, like, all of his military advisors and all, like, the entrenched state interests and just decide that he wanted to do this? Like, that's so strange to me. The only theory I've heard is that
he was just talking gibberish and his commanders misunderstood him.
Yeah, maybe
he already had to deal with China for them to take over.
Oh, that's a theory. There's another theory that it was actually. There's another theory that because our presence was so low, they didn't like it, so they wanted to pull us out, let it get bad again, and that way when we go back in, we'll have more. That's another theory that I've heard for why the deep state actually wants this. It's all Illuminati stuff, but it's fun.
I think it might be the case that it might be the case that was him thinking he was doing the right thing as well, right?
Yeah, it's possible he's got it. Sorry, keep going the game.
No, that's it.
Yeah, well, that's another one. That's my actual legitimate theory is that this guy just got it in his head that no other president had pulled out of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Obama said he would, but he didn't. He just lowered the count. Trump said he would, but he didn't. He just lowered the troop count. And he's like, no other president's been able to do it because once they got into office, people told them things, and no, I'm going to be the historic president. I'm going to get to be important. And then he got into office, closed his eyes, shut his ears, and just ran straight through the sliding glass door. And
exactly.
That's my theory. That's what I think happened.
Yeah, and that would explain why he didn't communicate with anyone, right? Because if he had communicated with allies, I think obviously what would happen is a bureaucratic hell would let him do the thing that he wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah, and the thing we forget is there's still American citizens, I believe, and very certainly people with American green cards or visa holders or whatever the hell. We abandoned people we were responsible for they're still there now.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah.
Okay, we're through everybody actually. Pax, do you got anything at the moment? If not, we'll jump to Milos and see if he's available. Pax, maybe? No? Okay. Yeah, Dan didn't use the word competent, and that's just so strange to me that that's the word he would use. It's just not what I think of. How about this? Let's go around and let's say one good thing that you think Biden has done. Let's be positive. So so could you name something good you think he's done? Doolittle, I guess. I'm just gonna make you hurt a little bit here.
It's going to take me a little bit more cognitive loading to
okay.
come up with something good that he's done.
Right.
I haven't seen. I'm not sure I've seen. Maybe someone else will give me some ideas.
Sure.
Something good that he's done.
I think I had one.
Yeah.
He's probably He's an inspiration to every elderly person.
I wouldn't say that. I think he gives elderly people a bad name, surely.
No, I mean
You guys are so
president,
mean.
right? Like, if you're
He gives validity to anyone who claims old people can't be in charge.
You're so mean. So mean. Yes. Daotsu.
At least when speaking of military operations, anyway.
Yeah. Daotsu, I want to get you back in here. I'm sure we said a lot of stuff that you could react to. I'm just wondering what you think.
What was that?
I was just asking you about like if anything we've said has like sparked any thoughts, because I know you came in not knowing very much. We've talked about a few things. I was wondering if you had any opinions, and if not, that's fine.
I've been kind of in and out. My head is killing me right now.
No, I'm sorry, man. All right, I'll leave you alone. I'll stop kicking you. Sorry, man.
Do you guys want me to read the list?
The list?
There's a top 100 by CAP Action, which is it.
There's a list.
There's people on his side. Yeah.
Okay, great. But let's not breeze through them too quick.
Oh, okay.
Sure, go ahead.
I've got one positive thing to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I might be wrong again, I'm not really following American politics that closely, but I don't think he started any wars.
That is true. He has not started any wars. Yeah.
It hasn't been in for you. Okay.
It's a low bar. It's a low bar.
Let's hope he's the second president in a row to not start any wars.
That would be great. That would be good. Lebowski, are you back yet, or are you still muted and AFK?
Okay, I'll start reading since nobody else has.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Something good by his own.
No, I want you to go through. I want you to go through. We just had a new person, so let me talk to Grim and then we'll go through the list. Grim, actually, I haven't seen you in a while, dude. As you might have guessed, we're talking about Biden's presidency. I want to get your take. Are you impressed, disappointed, surprised by anything? Do you miss Trump yet? Like, what do you think about how he's been doing?
I think that he's destroyed democracy in Afghanistan in 2010 when he removed the voted prime minister with Iran. I think that he reneged his decisions on the pipeline, on how to handle the stock market. In fact, a lot of policies that got him into office and got them the nomination, he's actually gone backwards on. And additionally, I don't think that he understands how Twitter can work, so he's the last guy I would want in the room discussing on how it should. Now, you can see I didn't vote for that guy. Or didn't vote for the other guy.
Understandable. That sums up pretty well. Every single time we're about to go to the list, a new challenger approaches. Okay, Chad, we are talking about Biden's presidency. At the beginning of this talk, the consensus was that he was actually competent and an improvement over Trump, and all the problems have been mostly COVID problems. Since then, the consensus of the room has seemed to be that he is not competent, and the border and the inflation and the Afghanistan stuff can all be placed squarely at his feet. So I'm wondering what you think about that. If you've been impressed with Biden's presidency or disappointed, just how you think he's doing. Hey, Chad, you go, and then we'll go to Pro Hazer.
Oh, go ahead. What were you saying?
No, you go first, then we'll go to Pro Hazer.
Yeah. No, I am definitely kind of going to be preoccupied here for a minute, so listen more than I speak. But as of right now, yeah, I don't believe that you can really place any blame for much of anything squarely on Biden's shoulders, just through that sheer kind of, establishment Democrat malaise. There's not really anything that I could say he's done particularly well, but at the same time, there's nothing that he's done particularly bad. He seems to be as establishment as it gets, as mundane, as boring. There's been no radical change. The Republicans' consistent, obstructionist measures have, of course, done exactly what I thought they would. I will redact that. The handling of Afghanistan was better than I expected, even though it was obviously not great. So maybe that's one thing he's done okay. Everything else has just been, shit on a platter that was handed to him that he has had to clean up the best he can. And that's about it.
All right. Well, we do love hot takes here, don't we, everybody? So, Pro Hazer, you just hopped in. I want to ask you the exact same question. Then we'll open up the room to respond to you and Chad, because that's a take right there. Pro Hazer, I saw your face for a second. I don't know why you're running away. But what do you think about Biden's presidency? Disappointed? Impressed? What do you think? How's he been doing? We can't hear you, mate. You're muted.
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
Full disclosure, I'm not an American.
That's okay. I forgive you.
I have been paying some attention, and I guess, in a word, disappointed. I was hoping for some professionalism and competence, and I don't feel like he's done that. I feel like he's in a state of decline mentally, and that his team is not supporting him very much at all. Afghanistan was abysmal. His capitulation to wokeness is embarrassing, and yeah, not very positive, I'm afraid.
Not very positive. Okay. Thank you, Pro Hazer. I don't know if you've been in before, but welcome. I'd like to see you more.
No, yeah. Thank you. I've been meaning to join, but it's just the calls have been at inconvenient times for me, but I finally made it.
Yeah, well, these are supposed to be pretty regular if I'm doing my job correctly. So, love to see more of you.
Sweet.
Thank you. But Chad brought up a few things, and essentially the idea is that Biden had, and I'm not trying to straw man. So Chad, let me know if I'm just trying to represent you fairly here. So let me know if I fail to do that. But what I'm hearing is that because of the Byzantine nature of politics and government, nothing can really be placed squarely as the responsibility of Biden's. And even if it could, most of what he's been doing is cleaning up Trump's mess, and he hasn't really been creating that much change himself. So Chad seems to be disappointed in Biden from the position that he's too moderate and not progressive enough, while the rest of this room, and I have to admit myself included, is more disappointed from the other side of the spectrum. So I'm glad that we have a bit of intellectual diversity here. I'm wondering what the room thinks about that. Pax, I'm going to go to you, and then we'll open it up to Andy. Pax. Oh, Mace, do you have something?
I was just going to say I wouldn't really call that diversity if it's 20
Yeah. I was going to say, that doesn't necessarily sound diverse as much as it's just...
That's why I said a little bit.
I have a unique perspective more than anything else.
A little bit of intellectual diversity, a little bit. But yes, point taken.
I want to ask, so why, I'm sorry to make you reiterate it if you've already done it, but why do you think that Afghanistan was handled poorly on Biden's behalf?
Because all the reports that I'm aware of show that he went against the recommendation of his advisors repeatedly. And he didn't wait for the non-fighting seasons when he could have, and he pulled out military personnel before civilian. And all of this, I could squarely blame on military incompetence if I wanted to, but the problem is that every report we've gotten is that he went against his advisors. So
can I just add one more thing?
Please.
He completely.
So military advisors...
No, Game, you add one more thing and then we'll go to Chad, sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, he also completely fucked up, his, diplomacy move, right? He didn't talk with anyone that he should have talked first, right? He didn't talk with Germany. No, but he had allies there, right? America has I feel weird talking about Biden as if this was America's decision in a way, right? Biden making a move means that America supports that move, else the move wouldn't have happened. So in a way, America took a shit on all of their allies by taking what everyone knew to be the major force holding Afghanistan, but it does endangering everyone else's lives by doing that.
Right.
Well,
So yeah.
All right, Chad. Yeah, what do you think,
the
man?
extra point.
Yeah, Chad, your
no,
turn.
I agree with what he said. America was technically the only power that was there that would ever had a, I guess you could say, a stronghold and a strong resistance presence to any sort of Al-Qaeda takeover or any other, I guess, delineation and degradation back into tribal politics and tribal warfare, which has historically been how Afghanistan has existed for millennia at this point. So I don't necessarily think we should have ever been there in the first place, which is kind of where I guess, get my initial standpoint. So then, once we've decided to pull out, yes, it absolutely put, pressure on the interests of other nations, considering most of the Five Eyes would have preferred to remain in there due to their own business interests and a couple other just kind of, I guess, Iron Curtain residue holdover, I guess, power grab more than anything else. So yeah, once we decided to pull out, we didn't have any responsibility to take care of those soldiers that were there in other countries because they ought to have been informed of this plan before, which they were for years now. Trump as well. One of the only things that I think Trump has done, at least relatively effectively, was say, hey, we are de-escalating in Afghanistan. We are drawing troops back. We are pulling them back to a non-combatant force, down to all the way, I think, the popular number is somewhere around 2,000 advisors, which really would only be, general TACPs, maybe they're the only ones that would get in any sort of combat scenarios, and everyone else just trains. So I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing, even a pullout against all of our fellow nations' wishes. But of course, it was going to be against their wishes, but we're the only ones doing anything. It's going to make them work harder for once, at least. I thought this was a big, I guess, positive of the Trump presidency. Everyone touted him as someone who was making, our allies pay their fair share in NATO and making America less the world police. So it's ironic that entire narrative gets 100% flipped as soon as it's a Democratic president in office. But I don't know.
Well, I don't think it's the fact that he pulled out that's pissing people off as much as how he did it. I mean, there's some people who are
of course,
upset.
that's always the excuse.
Oh, okay. Why don't you believe them, I guess, would be the next question.
The military advisor has a very distinct, I guess, hawkish view at any point. There's not a single general out there that doesn't deal with war. That's their job. So, of course, it makes more sense tactically and presents less risk to everyone involved, at least everyone that we want to protect, our soldiers, our citizens, our whatever, to either escalate and or delay. However, when we're in communication with the tribes and the people, Al-Qaeda, what was the other group that bombed, ISIS-K, whatever other extremists are out there that are going to do everything they can to continue the war, and they say, hey, we really want a hard date for you to leave, or we will escalate the violence even further, you're presented with two options. You can either increase the amount of force that you have there, which would send more troops into Afghanistan, and then delay our exit even farther. This also happened in, I think it was in the 80s with Russia and their exit from Afghanistan. Or you can do what Biden did and say, nope, hard date, we're leaving on this time. It's going to be an absolute clusterfuck, but it's better than nothing. And hey, if you're not able to get there in time, well, we've had plenty of time to prepare this. We were notified months in advance. Hope to God that the people we've been training and equipping will, delay the best they can.
That did not work. But
so, yeah, no, not at all.
No, can I just say
Please.
a couple of things?
Please, and then we'll go to Bill.
I listened to the reaction in the, well, I don't know the word, the chamber of secrets of the British. I heard, I listened to the first couple of meetings that they had discussing this. Can you hear me? I can hear you.
Yeah, I got you.
I think maybe we lost Chad.
Yeah, I was changing my Wi-Fi network here. I'm back now.
All right. And well, I was saying that in their reactions, Boris, what's his name? Boris Johnson? Is that his
Boris Johnson.
name? Yeah. Everyone is basically attacking him. All the other politicians are throwing rocks at him, saying, how did we not know that this was going to happen? And he's saying, no one knew, right? He's saying I was in meetings, like urgent meetings with the German chancellor. I was in like no one knew that this was going to happen. So you're saying, so this is against that argument that everyone knew months in advance. I don't think that's the case at all. I think maybe this had been planned at some point, right? I mean, Afghanistan was never a colony, right? The whole idea was to do something with it, which wasn't done. You basically gave up and then went away from it. But I don't think the plans were discussed as you're making it sound like they were.
Oh, for sure. Any military action has been discussed for, oh God. Whenever Trump first decided to say that we're leaving Afghanistan. So here's the big thing. How many times does a politician, whether it be American, British, whatever, have to state something before someone takes it seriously? I would argue that this is indicative of a much larger problem in American politics, with politicians saying they're going to do something and then never following through. In this case, Biden actually followed through with something that his predecessor, Trump, and he both clearly stated months and months ago, in Trump's case years ago, finally followed through with this conversation, actually pulled soldiers out, and then the entire world is like, whoa, wait a minute, I didn't expect you to actually follow through with your word. Well, I mean, I hate to say it, but that's kind of how the world works, especially when you're the predominant power in the middle of a, I guess you could say, I don't know, an imperialistic action. So.
I don't know, man.
All right.
I think
Game, you're gonna get to respond, and then we're gonna have to move around the room because we got some new folks. So go ahead.
That's fair. I think I don't know. I think Shad, you're not. I don't think you're seeing the obvious thing here, which is that by giving up on Afghanistan in the way that America decided to do, because the main reason why we were there, even though I know mostly Americans have all of these theories of conspiracy, that it's because America wanted Afghanistan's oil or some shit like that. Mostly the reason why America and Europe were in Afghanistan was to try to battle out what we intrinsically disagree with in terms of cultural views and the way to live, right? Like we have our Western ideals and we think those are the right things to do. And we were there defending these against both Middle Eastern insane people, and also not all of Middle Eastern are insane. I mean, those ones that were coming here and bombing people, and China and Russia at the same time, who were both financing all of these groups against America and against the West, and have always been doing that, right? Since the Cold War.
Every country has been doing that forever. That makes sense. You're right.
Well, no. There's a clear divide between the world. There's a clear divide in ideals, and there's a clear divide between the West and the East. And no matter how much people want to believe in multiculturalism and all of that, that's still true. Like it doesn't matter that you flee away from them; they'll come to get you either way, because that's how ideas work. And this is a crucial stab to the Western values, and it's really dangerous what happened. Not just because we lose ground to all the wrong ideas that we don't want to see in the world, like defending multiculturalism, which is something that we want and everyone hates in the world except for Westerns. Every single other country hates that. But we also lose a lot in terms of how diplomacy was working between the United States and Europe, which is the West. So it helps on degrading the last things that I think are valuable in terms of ideals in the world, which is really bad. Yeah, so that's my take on Afghanistan.
All right,
Makes
Chad.
sense. I guess
Last
we'll have to.
last word on this.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying you can have last word on this, and then we'll move around.
All right. Yeah. So as far as the whole, I guess, conspiracy theory that there's a delineation between the East and West, and it's a war of ideas that has escalated into actual war, seems to be a little idealistic, and it's not something that I necessarily subscribe to. Again, for every bad thing, scary thing that you have seen the quote-unquote East do in cases like Russia and China funding ISIS-K or ISIS or whatever, Al Jazeera, whatever other Middle Eastern terror groups you will find, again, the Five Eyes. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that group. It's literally just all of the big quote-unquote Western countries' intelligence services that all interact together. They have been funding rebels in Chechnya. They have been funding Ukrainians, I guess, loyalists. All the other countries' quote-unquote terror groups have been funded by us in the same way all of our terror groups are funded by them. So again, I guess this is a little bit of a dichotomy / similarity that needs to be addressed, if not focused on. But yeah, I don't necessarily think it's a cultural thing at all. But let's move on.
Yeah, all right. So I want to bring it back to Biden for these new people. I enjoyed that tangent very much. But,
cool.
You know, we have a topic. And it was related, obviously. Villain, welcome back. I'm personally glad to see you again. I would like to get your take on what you think of Biden, how he's been doing, what you've been surprised by, disappointed by, maybe even impressed. What you've been impressed by, if there's anything. Just give us your take. How do you think he's doing, man?
So Brandon.
Okay. Well, very clear. Do you want to elaborate, or do you just want to leave it there?
Biden's a puppet. He's mentally ill. Like anybody that's denying he's got mental cognitive decline severely right now is dishonest. The dude's mentally questionable at this point. I think that if you look at his actions, I think it started with the Obama camp. What's the word I'm looking for?
Terms.
Administration.
Yeah.
I think he's actively acting to dismantle U.S. power and coherence.
Okay. I tend to agree, and that's a pretty popular opinion here tonight. I'm gonna go to Underjoyed, and then we'll hop over to Dan. Underjoyed, I don't know if I've really seen you here before. What do you think about how Biden's been doing so far? We're like 9 months in. What do you think?
No, I just joined the channel. Not really sure what you guys are on about. Yeah, I see you guys talking about Biden as a puppet. I'm not really sure. I think people see him as, when he ran, it was a definite distinction between ideologies, right? Like Republican, Democrat, left versus right. So Biden was the figurehead, and in terms of him being a puppet, I think people weren't really that delusional. They knew Biden was past his prime, but their hopes were that the Biden administration would be more fruitful than a Republican administration. So I think a lot of people understand that Biden takes advice from people that are making policy, people that are giving him advice, and people that have similar ideologies hopefully to them. So I'm not sure if that's better or worse than someone that wants to be a dictator, saying that someone that's in power should just do whatever they want without listening to their advisors is one thing. Biden might be a bit more helpless because he's so old, and he definitely has cognitive decline. I don't think he has mental illness, but I think it's time for us to stop voting for people that are 90 years old. I mean,
yeah, I actually agree with that. That's right. We have been electing steadily older people to office just in general, in Congress too. I don't know why we do that. It's very strange. Dan, you've heard a couple of pretty impassioned attacks on Biden's performance so far. I'm curious how what you think about that.
I mean, I haven't heard everything like came in and out, but no, Biden's literally. I've said before, like when we have to recognize that when we elect the president today, we're not electing an individual, we're electing a party. Biden is the figurehead of the Democratic Party. Of course, he's obviously in cognitive decline. I think we don't let people who are over the age of like 70 work in specific jobs because of cognitive decline. It just comes with the age. I don't understand why we have that. We don't have a cap on presidency.
We absolutely should, yeah.
We absolutely need to. This is a severe problem, right? Let's not forget. I'm sure everyone here remembers when they started driving. The first thing we thought about was like, why in the world are we still letting like 80-year-olds drive, right? So, I don't think this is any different in that situation. And yeah, and like I said again, when it comes to, I think I heard a little tangent about Afghanistan and the U.S. involvement in Afghanistan. I think that is related to geopolitics, and the same with the U.S. involved itself in South Korea. These are political strongholds. These are proxy states. This is what the U.S. has been trying to do, and the Western world has been trying to do. China tries to do the same thing with the Belt and Road Initiative, just because of these are resources and acquisition of resources and resource control. This is what countries have been doing forever. And again, I think Afghanistan, yes, the buck does, of course, I heard people say before I left, I think I heard Doodle say, the buck does stop with Biden. The Biden administration absolutely failed in the exodus of Afghanistan. But the Afghanistan failure rolls all the way up till, I think, Afghanistan started under Bush or Clinton, I don't remember it, probably Bush. It starts with Bush to Obama, Bush to Obama.
Bush, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Bush to Obama to Trump and Biden. They are all responsible.
Has anyone able to give a hypothetical what would have been a successful withdrawal from Afghanistan where Biden failed? Like, it seems to me that
I can do that.
There's some nuance involved where, you know,
100%.
you can say there's some magic we can wield where withdrawing from Afghanistan has no consequences.
No.
In the real world, like, yeah.
No, it certainly has consequences. But there's a couple things that could have been done better. Number one is we could have pulled out not during the Taliban's fighting season. Because the Taliban actually has fighting seasons where they fight and then sometimes they don't. So if we waited till later in the winter, that means they wouldn't have collapsed in on all our stuff. Also, we could have made sure we pulled out all of our non-combat personnel before we pulled out our combat personnel. And also, we could have not given up the massive Air Force base first before we got everybody out. And then we wouldn't have had to rely on this tiny airport in the middle of the city. So I think if we did those three things, this pullout would have been much more successful.
Those are your three biggest things. No, I think number one on everyone's list, I'm pretty certain, would be leaving all of the equipment.
Oh yeah, that's true too. That's also bad. I was thinking.
If they didn't abandon the big Air Force base, they could have got the weapons and stuff out.
It's such common sense. If you're withdrawing your forces, you don't leave behind loads of ammunition, weapons, armor, and vehicles to fall into the wrong hands. You either relocate it or destroy it.
You know what? So here's what
if you're trying to damage the U.S. If you were trying to damage the U.S., then it all made perfect sense to do it that way.
It's the third time he's done it, so it's not like the first time. The third time he's done it.
When people claim that something is so common sense and that people in power are just too stupid to just realize common sense, I think sometimes there's far more factors at play than the average person realizes, and we're not really privy to every single angle that has been involved. It's a kind of like chess game where we don't understand all the rules, and for the average person, yes, it's common sense to do that. We didn't get people out that helped us before we withdrew. We left a bunch of equipment behind, but the reasons, we're not all that privy to these reasons, and to say that, well, it's common sense to have solved those problems when we don't know exactly the reasons why these things happen is a bit presumptuous for someone on Discord right now to say, you know what, like, I could have solved I could have just solved this shit way better than people that CIA intelligence officers, generals, shit like that. They just didn't know enough about what's going on. I had a better answer to this. I think maybe there's some factors involved that we just don't know about.
That
Agreed,
sounds a
wholeheartedly.
little bit like an argument to authority there.
Absolutely not. When there's all right, let me ask you a question about all the I guess the logistical nightmare, quote unquote, of pulling all of the equipment that you had left specifically for a combat force who was going to continue your work after you're leaving. How do you think you should get all of that, I guess, all of the materials, the equipment, the trucks, the weapons, the ammo, the ammunition, just all of that stuff out with 2,500 soldiers, most of which weren't in active combat roles? I'd say honestly, they're probably, 500 18F, SF. They're trainers, basically. They're the intelligence corps that goes in and actually is required to make sure that the remaining Afghan forces had sufficient training to fight against the Taliban and whatever other extremists would come about. How do you take a group of 2,500 people and all of a sudden decide that, hey, this group is going to be the ones to carry out all of this ammunition, all of this stuff from the country? I mean, how do you do that?
You've got three options, and all of these are, well, these are the three common sense options, which don't include leave it all for the Taliban to take. Option one, which is the most obvious one, is you take the equipment back as possible. So probably not all in one go, might take a few months, maybe even a few years, have a phased approach to it. Option two is you quickly take back all the equipment that you can, and then anything you can't take back, you just destroy there at the sites. Actually, yeah, I think that's it, really.
Didn't
So
leave it
yeah,
for the
let me.
Afghan forces,
No.
though?
I was gonna say
Option three, if you can't move the equipment and you can't destroy the equipment, then you don't withdraw your troops.
I think their point.
Gets into what I wanted to talk about. So, if you say you don't withdraw your troops, and we don't have the logistical means to actually go through for whatever search and destroy missions we have, for the weapons that we left to a friendly force for them to combat the enemy, okay, then I guess we would have to increase the number of combat troops in in Afghanistan. Would anybody have cut Biden any slack for all of a sudden saying, guess what? We're going to add another, 10, 15,000 people just as combat troops, plus a bunch of support staff as well, all in the country? Would that mass exodus have gone over well in the middle of a pandemic?
No, because it wouldn't have been necessary, because the region was stable with what we had before we left.
You should have at least negotiated a status of forces agreement before leaving.
Well, Trump did. Trump negotiated peace with the Taliban, so they could
He did.
leave. That was his promise. This is why I keep going back to this is an American problem. This is an American failure.
No,
This
okay.
is-
Yes,
Status
no.
of forces agreement is an agreement with the country to be allowed to leave a certain amount of forces there in a certain state of readiness.
So when they specifically outlined the date, which was the date that we left, I mean, how do you negotiate around that? Just say, no, we're not going to abide by that agreement. So then when they escalate and then American soldiers die, what do you do then? Well, it's better to leave equipment with
thought you didn't negotiate with terrorists anyway. Why were you negotiating with them?
I don't know why people say don't negotiate with terrorists, especially when you're in their country, right?
Because if you negotiate with terrorists, they can make demands of you. If you don't negotiate with terrorists, then they can never talk to you.
Well, look at 1948 in Israel. That was entirely negotiations with a bunch of Zionist and Muslim terrorists who were bombing the British because they wanted their fucking areas. So the British were like, listen, we're out of here. We're done getting bombed. We're done with this. You guys do your own thing, right? It's not as simple as we don't negotiate with terrorists. That's a platitude. That's a that's a talking point that parties have been saying the last 20 years for some reason. Of course, you negotiate with your enemy. You learn this in like kindergarten. Right.
I got a hypothesis for this, that if I can, firstly I agree with pretty much everything, but the Villain report said earlier that Biden is incompetent and trying to damage America, but I think that it can only be one of those two things, and I personally think he's incompetent. So what's going on is just that. It's mistakes and a series of ill-considered actions that have consequences, and we look back and think, well, it should have been done like this. But the cause of these problems it's simply incompetence. It's not that anybody is trying to destroy America. with the obvious exception of the jihadists, but it's not an inside job that is causing these problems. And so if we look at it through that lens, from my perspective, it all kind of is explainable. The leaving of military equipment behind was a mistake and an accident and incompetence. The leaving at the wrong time of the year was just ill-considered and incompetence. And every other mistake it's just incompetence. And you can't solely blame Biden. I mean, he's senile and he shouldn't be in that position. That's a bigger problem than just Biden walked into that position and is now culpable. It's the larger system that enabled that to happen.
I agree.
Yeah,
but let's recognize that Biden isn't like, yes, Biden makes a decision. We have to really, really recognize that the presidential position is a party position. It's not an individual position. This has been true in the U.S. for over 60, 70 years. You elect a party to run the executive branch. This is how it's been for a while now.
Trump would be the exception to that.
So if the U.S. if leaving the weapons behind in Afghanistan is such a big deal, why did Russia do the same thing? Like, I mean, are we talking about like just such incompetent people in positions of power, or was there, when the pullout was involved, it was just far more pragmatic to leave shit behind than to try to take everything with you? Like, I mean, eventually there's an analysis involved that, where like common sense isn't just being part of a video game. It's like real life is a lot more complicated. So when we leave, say, small arms behind, maybe vehicles, things like that, where the Taliban can film themselves on their
It wasn't just small arms.
Just burnouts on. How useful are those? Military equipment, really? Like, I mean, so in Afghanistan, the vast majority of small arms
Not at all.
AK-47. So even like the M16s left behind have different ammo systems where they're not going to get the 5.56. Like, so it's not going to be that useful because they don't have small arms.
As well.
Like the big arms, they might have tanks, but they might not have munitions, right? So what could
they
a
have
tank
munitions.
without munitions? Like what good is a helicopter, like an Apache helicopter without Hellfire missiles? Like eventually the loss of certain arms.
One at a time. Come on, guys.
Yeah. Okay. Go. Sorry. Go on.
No,
everything you said in this last session,
it makes a
it's
lot
made
of
me
sense.
feel that you're jumping through amazing hurdles to just. It doesn't seem like you're arguing 4 points. You're just trying to justify what you already believe.
Yes, because I don't think generals are idiots. I don't think people in political power, be it Russia or the U.S., they happen to be idiots. No, Russia and the U.S., like, they're on opposing factions, and they ended up doing the same thing, and they're not stupid.
But no one's saying that they are stupid, right? The actual argument.
So why? So you have to justify why did they do this?
I have no idea.
Stupid, or did they have
Well, no. What I think what people are saying is that Biden, like multiple times, was already said that Biden went against what his generals were telling him to do, right?
Yeah.
He did something, which is exactly the previous point to before you started making this point. Was that it was
he went against what the generals recommended.
Yeah.
That is a new claim that I've not heard.
Oh no, that's well documented.
I can kind of back up what he says. So like,
Please.
I have a buddy of mine. He was in the military. He's an Army Ranger. He last saw deployment. Pretty much, he ended at the end of the Obama administration, and even he was telling me from his point of view that he did go against all fucking, what's it called, standards and shit like that. He did do that. That is definitely true.
I mean, this is not my opinion, right? We know this to be a fact, right? Like, this is not an opinion.
Yes.
This is.
That is a fact for sure.
No.
One at a time.
So here's the thing about,
Chad.
I'm assuming if your buddy was 101st or something like that, if he was a ranger. Here's the big thing. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, he was at 100 at first. He's on the way now, actually. I can't remember his exact unit number. Something or other Mountain Division. I know he's told it to me a million times. I just can't remember it right now. But yeah, he's not 101st.
Well, cool. All right. Either way, all right. Let's say he's SF, right? He's got his major tab. Cool. Boots on the ground don't always have a geopolitical view like a general, like a colonel, like shit, whatever the fuck major is out there. I appreciate his anecdotal experience. However, that's not something that plays into political machinations in the same way. So I think that taking that sort of idea from a completely different 2 administrations ago doesn't really mean anything with the withdrawal of recent history. But on top of that, something that's real important to note is the fact that whether or not the recommendations, quote unquote, were followed, is kind of a false framing of everything, because there's not a single time where 100% of the plan has been followed when you talk to whatever generals you've got. I mean, shoot, they're going to be more hawkish. They're going to say, hey, we need more supplies, we need more funding, we need more troops. That happens every single time. Nobody has ever.
That doesn't make it less true.
I just want to jump in real quick with a few Google searches, and from what I'm seeing, is that it is true that presidents did voice concerns about the withdrawal. Some of the White House administrations made the point that they were trying to honor the date made by the former president, and that the concerns they thought weren't going to actualize due to some COVID threats or other things. It was a mistake. It wasn't like, let's fuck this up, I'm going to ignore what you said. The Joint Chiefs, General Mark Milley, Frank McKenzie, didn't just go, this is going to happen if you withdraw. This is a concern we might have. And the administration decided that they didn't expect it to happen in the way it did. Yeah,
I don't see. I don't see how this is any different from from what we just said.
Yeah,
also,
I mean that's all fine.
Against,
yeah.
They also went against every other ally, right? No other ally wanted to actually leave in the way that they left, and at the time that they left. So they also went against every other ally that was there.
Yeah, Britain didn't intend to leave at all. They wanted a small occupational force. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, occupational force is applying intent where I shouldn't, because I don't know that. But they left. They wanted to leave a force in the same way that Canada had a very small.
Right. But small occupational forces like Canada and UK were piggybacking off the majority occupational forces that the US had in place. So
yes,
even if Canada and the UK didn't want to leave because their special forces are still in the region, they were entirely dependent on the US being in the region. So they didn't have a choice. So to say that they didn't want to leave is a bit disingenuous, because they had far less stakes involved than what the US did. So when the US left, they were the entire hegemonic power in the region, and US and the UK were just, kind of special forces, sniper teams, like all the shit being involved. They weren't the powers that were, holding down regions and political power and all this policing that's going on. So I don't think the opinion is that. I don't think the opinion is that valid.
Hold on, guys.
We can't occupy an entire country with 2,500 people. The big thing is we were relying on the Afghan National Army and all the rest of their security groups to do the work for us. We only existed as like a passive threat and to provide air assistance. And like I said, when I said TACP, maybe you guys didn't know what that is. That's a special forces operator who provides an advisory role for combat troops. They're the ones that direct the Air Force to strike targets, right?
Yeah, that was most of our people.
That wasn't most of them. Most of them were 18F, which were intelligence service, the trainers. And then a whole lot of Air Force guys, and even more, I'm sure, just general like logistics personnel. It was not, we didn't have combat troops in the way that you're thinking.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a massive occupying force.
So I don't think we're particularly going over any new ground here over the last 20 minutes talking about this again. Is there anybody that disagrees that we should be out? It's a good thing that we're out of Afghanistan, even though maybe
not everyone thinks that happened the best way possible. I mean, but it did happen.
I mean, there's an argument.
I actually think it's a bad thing. I like war.
There's an.
No, seriously. Is there anybody?
Yeah, I got you.
Who thinks we would be better off if we were still occupying Afghanistan?
My thing is, to begin with, it's kind of a similar thing to Nam. I don't think we should have even really been trying to, police that shit to begin with. Honestly, I think we'd be a lot better just worrying about ourselves. This whole police the world thing that the government has taken on, I don't agree with in general.
That's not the discussion, though. Okay.
No, I can answer your question though, Dilo. Okay, man.
I know, but I think that if you really look at the magnitude of it, there's a few thousand people essentially that probably were hurt more than they should have been in the withdrawal. But I don't think there's a lot of people that disagree with the whole concept of the withdrawal. And in the long scheme of things, it's a pretty minor loss, even though it's embarrassing.
I'm gonna hold on. Underjoyed, you've had the mic a lot. I'm gonna have to step in here. It's time to be moderator. I'm sorry. So I could levy an argument at that just about relatively low cost and keeping the region stable means our enemies don't get to gather forces, blah blah blah. I don't really care. This is a very fun conversation, but our topic isn't exclusively Afghanistan, it's Biden's presidency overall. So I want to try to pull us out of the weeds of this particular argument because, as Dude Little pointed out, we got a bit repetitive. So I kind of want to move over to the economic side of things. I would move to the border, but we talked about that 2 weeks ago. I want to move to the economic side of things because there's a lot of people in the room now. What's been going on is that there has been inflation. We don't know how bad it is. The Fed has stopped calling it transitory, though. We have very, very large labor shortages and therefore high unemployment, and our supply lines are going to shit, and we can't save Christmas, basically, is kind of the line. So, yeah. So, now, my personal theory is that when you spend, a lot of money, and put a lot of new money into the economy, that creates inflation, especially when supply chains means there's less goods for those dollars to be chasing. And also when you pay people to stay home and make them afraid to work with the vaccine rhetoric, be that vaccine rhetoric right or wrong, it makes people not want to go to work as much. So it seems like a fairly consistent line to draw that some of the more recent policy might have contributed to our current economic situation. But I know that the opinion that it's actually the COVID virus and Trump's tax cuts might have gone to it might be the real culprit. So I just kind of wanted to jump back on that. I don't know if we got... I don't remember who we've talked to about this. I want to jump over to Villain and see what he thinks, and then we'll jump over to some other people. So what do you think about Biden on the economy? How much do you think we can really say he's responsible for? What do you think?
I have no opinion.
No opinion? Okay. Andy, what about you, man? Andy?
Andy likes war.
Andy does like war. It's so true. What about PAX? You haven't talked in a while, man. What do you think? I'm striking out here. I don't know what to say. All right, Dan, you're up, man.
Yeah, I like
you actually raised a good question. I'm surprised that a lot of people are responding.
What?
I mean, inflation right now is happening globally. You see it almost across the entire world, right? So,
sure.
I don't think it's U.S. specific. When it comes to low-skilled work, I think immigration is necessary, especially since the United States Census showed that we have a decreasing population, which is usually correlated with, lack of work and not enough people to work and worker shortages, especially in a developed country like the United States.
Okay. But we're not running out of people right now, though. We just have a lot of people who are unemployed, right?
Yeah, isn't it exactly the opposite then?
Unemployment is down.
No. Okay,
What?
so which one is it? Because if the unemployment is up, then you need less immigration. If unemployment is down, then immigration is whatever. I don't even know how it relates to immigration.
How
if
can
unemployment is
unemployment be down and labor shortages be up? I gotta really be
because
missing
everybody
something
can't
here.
work for it.
Huh?
This
What's
is
it
this is
called?
just a quick Google.
Significant
Right?
amount of people have figured out that their labor is worth more than what they were originally getting. So then they moved on
Yeah,
to bigger
with
and better positions.
yes,
No,
that's actually correct. I think that's right.
Listen. Unemployment is, guys. Unemployment is simply people that are looking for work who can't find it, and they are receiving unemployment insurance benefits.
Right.
I didn't think
So
it
if
mean
they
anything else.
if they have been out of a job for a year and a half, they're not considered unemployed by the unemployment metrics. So we could have 3% unemployment and 50 million people left the workforce, and still have a massive labor shortage.
Right. And I think Chad, I mean, I wouldn't phrase it the way you did, obviously, but there is something to be said that, like, look, now that the government stimulus, and I know that ended kind of recently, but I think it's almost a mental thing as much as it is like a tangible thing. Now that people have gotten used to the government isolating them from like cost and loss and have gotten used to like not having to go to work to like make money, that's made people not go to work as often. Who would have thunk it? So I think that's right. So, I mean, isn't that basically an admission that some of Biden's policies did contribute to this, Chad, or am I misunderstanding you?
No, you're misunderstanding the entire
Okay,
question. I was
please.
speaking on a different, or a somewhat tangential topic.
All right, well, please.
Sorry guys, I disconnected. My computer crashed.
Oh, really? I didn't even notice. That was quick.
Why is
But
it?
yeah, I was just saying that people have realized that their labor is worth more overall, therefore they can be a little bit more selective about the jobs. So there's not a labor shortage, it's just a shortage of, high-paid jobs. So
Also to add, pre-COVID, we know that majority of low-skilled labor workers were working more 2 to 3 jobs. That is not the case currently, and that's where we're seeing a lot of problems.
And I also don't think it's a lack of pay. Like it's the problem isn't that low wage jobs just don't pay enough. I think it's the requirements of low skilled jobs, right? Like people have such demands. Like if you're gonna want a minimum wage jobs working in a fast food restaurant or whatever, you need to be a grinder. You need to be able to hustle. You need to not take any time off. You can't take any breaks. You can't, if you have a child that needs help, you can't, just go away and like help your child or help your spouse. Like all these jobs have such high requirements now. Like it's insane, right? Like before, like I remember fucking in the early 90s or even in the 80s, you go to McDonald's, it's like 20 people in the back room, like people making burgers, fucking food, all this shit. You go to McDonald's right now, it's like 3 people working in that McDonald's. So the requirement for those jobs are such high stress. So I think there's a large majority of the population, they're willing to work for less money for a lower stress job. But there are no jobs, there are lower stress jobs. These jobs have gone away. And it just removes the vast majority of the workforce from wanting to work. A lot of people just no longer want to participate in that workplace.
Nivik, you're new. You popped in. We're talking about the Biden presidency and how you think he's been doing so far. Specifically, we're talking about the economic side of things. How much you think he's responsible for, the inflation stuff and the empty jobs stuff. So please give us your hot takes.
I don't really have one at the moment.
Nivik doesn't have a take? I thought that was impossible. Fair enough. Yeah, but it is a problem. Would you not agree? Like, our prices are up and inflation is outpacing wage growth, which means people are actually taking pay cuts. So is that
shit
is
that's been
not
happening for the last 70 years?
Well, it depends on what class you're in. So if you're If you were minimum wage, your pay has totally doubled in the last year.
Right, sure,
But still hasn't kept up with any sort of inflation.
Yeah, if you're like, well, no, the inflation's like headline inflation is like 5%, and if you look at certain classes of things, it's up like 50%. But minimum wages has doubled. Essentially, I mean, like not legally, but you can go to a gas station and get a job for $15 an hour.
So that's true, and the question is, why don't people want those jobs? It's not the wages. It's the fact that lowest wage jobs have such high standards that people just don't want that fucking shitty work-life balance to be abused. People don't want to be abused.
Right, but why didn't that happen before the pandemic? Right?
It was happening.
It was happening.
We had these. Wait, you're saying we had these same economic numbers before the pandemic? That's not true.
No, we were seeing certain things, a certain trend happen. The pandemic exacerbated it. But when you look at, economists have been saying for a while that the upcoming generation is going to be the first one to see its living condition and its wages and its affordability be under that of their parents and other people who come before them.
Right.
People who grew up in upper working class, middle class society don't want to. You see a lot more people in their 30s living at home, people in their late 20s living at home. This is because of the state of the economy, and COVID exacerbated that problem.
COVID, not right. Yeah, I guess the fundamental disagreement is how much is the virus and how much is the policy that surrounded it. I guess that's kind of the debate. Doolittle, do you have anything? We're getting kind of, we still have 20 minutes. We're okay. Lebowski, are you back? You've been in here the whole time.
He's deafened.
Yeah, he's not here. Okay.
So he's not going to.
Go ahead, Doolittle.
Personally, I think the virus has to do a lot because we're seeing this all over the world. And this is not just a U.S. specific thing.
Yeah, but we all know the global economy kind of follows the U.S.
So.
What I think is we're having like a power shift. We're having like consumers and workers. They're demanding more, and by the virus triggering that, and that it's people aren't just thinking about this. Okay, I'm just gonna go back to work.
Right, but we don't have people working. Do any of you think that it's a problem that we have lots of empty jobs right now?
Well, okay, no. So here's the real problem. The problem isn't like minimum wage jobs, like fast food jobs, because we can automate those jobs. The problem is we have an entire generation that are becoming plumbers, electricians, trades workers, which are fundamental to our continual kind of functioning of society. So if you have a home, you're going to need a plumber, you're going to need an electrician. And these people, like, if you ever called a plumber and an electrician, these people are like 60, 70 years old, like on the verge of retirement. It's very tough to find a young person that's going into those fields. And we're going to run into a big fucking issue very soon where a bunch of people are just going to college for, social arts, like all college degrees. And we're going to have a massive fucking shortage of people that can actually fix the problems that are happening. So imagine if you have a fucking plumbing leak and you can't get a fucking plumber. Like, that's going to happen within the next 5 years, guaranteed.
That's natural economics. As industries grow and shrink, they just change in value. So as you get less plumbers, the plumbing industry is just going to become more expensive. So, hiring a plumber will just be more expensive, but you'll still be able to get a plumber.
I think that with that in mind, this is something that economists have said for a long time is usually immigration generally solves that issue. People who grow up in the States, went to school here in the States, are generally go to high school, they go through the college, associate's degree pipeline. They're not interested in becoming plumbers. Immigrants generally take up those roles. And that is a good thing. This is how societies have worked for a while. I think the United States needs better immigration, more low-skilled immigration. I think that's what we're seeing. I think that American citizens don't want to work these low-skilled jobs.
I wonder if that would change if we, like, hypothetically, just like had way less immigration. I wonder if that attitude would change. If it's like, okay, well now there's a demand for it, so and we don't have a lot of people, so all of a sudden these tradespeople are getting paid a lot because high demand, low supply, and then all of a sudden Americans want to pay. But
And I
work those
actually
jobs.
disagree that we consider these low skilled jobs, because I think office jobs are almost far more low skilled than a lot of trade jobs. I think being an electrician is far more complicated than working in a fucking office and making $70 an hour.
100%.
So most electricians own an electrician's company and they hire workers, right? It's not like we don't have enough electrician positions. It's that we don't have low skilled who work for the electricians, who follow them around, who drive the trucks, who do the wiring, right? Most electrician work is done in construction. Look at the price of construction labor and materials; it's skyrocketing off the roof. This is all connected, right? The U.S. is it's just one of these things when you look at the global economy.
Can I say one thing? When you have people struggle, when you have businesses struggle, they compete to survive, and that can drive that can drive competition. That helps with innovation. People just putting out better product for consumers to buy to demand in order to stay in order to exist, in order to survive. So there's some positive that can come of it.
Yo, damn.
You don't create a better product, then you're down.
Pax, go ahead, man.
Wouldn't the right thing for these businesses would be to pay, such tradespeople more and incentivize more people to go into those jobs?
Yeah, exactly. Like if there was less.
That's just not the way it is right now, right?
No, I know it's not the way it is right
How the
now.
world works, of course.
I mean, no, I'm all for it. I think human labor should absolutely not be. I think 15 to say that the minimum people should be getting an hour of their time is $15 an hour is ridiculous. Human lives.
No, people with trades don't get $15 an hour. They get way more than that.
Yeah, the only people who get $15 an hour is incredibly low skill work, and it's meant for like teenagers.
No, I mean, but obviously, if these jobs are getting taken by immigrants, that they're not providing attractive incentives to native workers, right?
Yeah, Prax. I think you're on or Pax. I'm sorry. You're on the right track. As Don's 100% right at this point. The entry level for an apprenticeship to get into any trade is absolutely. I mean, there's no barrier to entry. So that does absolutely attract what is considered quote unquote low skill labor. And I don't want to belittle or get into any sort of argument about the cultural difference between white collar and blue collar work, because I think that's all just arbitrary and unnecessary. But the entry for an apprenticeship for all of these trades is very, very low. So you can get in there, and then eventually, yes, after a few years, you do make a significant amount of money, 100%. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, you have to go through the steps to get there first. And usually those positions aren't worth changing or just giving away the degree that you just spent thousands of dollars on for.
All right. Hold on, Nivik first, then Dan, and then it's my turn. Nivik.
Yes, sir. You don't necessarily need to be a very beneficial company to necessarily need a high skilled worker. You could have people work for pennies and have them do menial tasks of on an assembly line that they just put in that screw and the next person put in this screw for pennies and in creating something. So the risk of saying, you need a person if things change of people being educated in order to fill that might not necessarily be the case. Like with a car on an assembly line, like the horse and buggy industry, yeah, they put together carts, but you can just put a person on an assembly line. All they can do is just a simple menial task, and that's it. It just moves on.
All right, Dan, we're at the 11th hour, so let's be quick. But yeah, go ahead and respond, man.
Quick. Most of these, like when you work for a GC or you work for an electrician, there's an electrician with the license who does the work. You probably have like an apprentice or two. Then the rest of the people in the labor force are either undocumented or people who get paid on the books for like part-time work, but really working full-time and getting cash on the side. These are how these businesses run. This is how they've always run. If you know anything about construction, anything about these trade businesses, this is how it's done. This is what I mean by the entry to this is unaccessible. People who grew up in the States.
Okay. I got 10 minutes, and we got 2 newbies. So I guess we'll do what we usually do, and we'll just go around and give out some final thoughts. I thought this was a very fun discussion. We walked down a lot of different paths, I think. So I'm gonna get Kapowski and Bruce take, and then I think we'll go around the room and just have everybody's final thoughts in like a sentence or two, like our usual speed round to finish it off.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have to. I mean, I don't have
No,
to
please.
do that if you don't want. I just
Please.
came in and I don't even know what you're talking about.
I will
so
tell you. I will tell you what we're talking about. We are talking about Joe Biden and his presidency so far. We're talking about maybe he surprised you, maybe he impressed you, maybe he disappointed you. I just want to know what you think of the job that he's done so far. How do you think he's doing? And just give me your general take. Love to hear it. Kapowski.
Oh, geez. Well, I mean, you know, I'm not, I mean, I guess a C, you know, I mean, it's, you know, like, obviously Afghanistan was a horrible debacle. I mean, really horrible, and I'm disgusted by what happened there. And I think that should have been handled better. So it's like, I'm not sure how much to weigh that in my overall calculus. You know, COVID has been like, okay, like could have done, there's a lot more, you know, there's a lot more I'd like to see done on that front. As far as this $3.5 trillion spending bill, you know, it's giving him a lot of bad press. He's not going to pass it. It's a lot of infighting, so he's not doing so great there. He did have that one win on the infrastructure bill, so that's pretty good. And I mean, I think anybody's better than Trump, so I'm like, you know, just like thankful we don't have Trump.
The news is certainly quieter. I am less I mean, I will give you that. Yeah. It's certainly more calm on the surface. But thank you for your take. I very much appreciate it. I'm sorry you only came at the end. I wish you were here for the rest of it. Bruce, you have changed your profile picture.
Me too. Sorry, thanks a lot.
Say again?
Oh, hey, you guys were talking about
Yeah.
how Biden's doing?
Yeah, before you start though, I just want to say you have changed your profile picture and it looks legendary. I just want to put that out there. But yes, I would like your take on how you think Biden's doing.
I think it's too early to tell like the breadth of his presidency, but I think I don't know. Honestly, I think it's just sort of par for the course. You know, Obama 2.0. So, you know, It's basically what I expected.
Really? Did you expect the economic issues that we're hitting?
In some way, I mean, I think it was inevitable considering the COVID situation. So whoever inherited that would have, you know, either way.
See, I feel like I'm crazy. I feel like I'm alone in this. I always thought that, like, look, he's come in the office with a working vaccine. I figured, like, just the natural recovery would carry him. That's, like, I find this, the issues, now whether they're issues or not is up to debate. I personally find them to be kind of issues. I find them very surprising. I did not expect this at all.
I think it's pretty, I don't see how not. I mean, you're looking at massive amounts of spending, right? You're talking about speculation in the market as a result. I mean, there's all sorts of unrest in the economy, so I'm not really surprised. I think it was known as soon as the initial sort of lockdown scenario occurred. I don't see, you know, that was going to happen either way.
No, I get that, but I'm saying that after the vaccines came out, after he take office, I figured that as we were coming out of that, a natural recovery would have been inevitable. That's what I was saying. That's what I thought was gonna happen.
Oh, I just think it's going to be a lot longer for that.
No. Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, I don't know that it's like terrible outside of typical stuff. I'm not. In other words, I'm not really surprised.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I don't think it's great.
Yeah, Bruce, I wish you were here for the whole thing, man. Y'all are only coming in at like the end, so we're just gonna speed around the room here. Andy, are you still there? Just give me any final thoughts. If you've mind changed at all, let us know. If not, just one sentence take. What you thinking, Andy?
I don't know. My head's pretty empty. So move on to the next.
Fair enough. Lebowski is deafened. It's so sad. I'm gonna go Daotsu. What do you think, man? Have your mind been changed at all? Anything new? Any final thoughts, or are you good?
Well, I had to jump out in the middle of it there to wait for my Dayquil to kick in. But
understandable.
I think I'm relatively the same. Maybe I shifted a little bit more towards Bruce, a little bit more towards the it's too early to tell type of thing. Maybe in the next presidency we'll have a better understanding of what happened during this one.
Yeah. All right, thanks, man. I'm gonna skip over to Dan and do it. I'm putting you in the middle. So Dan, you go first. Any final thoughts? Mind changed on anything? Just anything you want to throw out there before the end? Going once, twice, sold, but not to you. All right, Hanging Chad, you're up.
Yeah, no, like I said at the very first thing I said, I am pretty much in agreement with Bruce. I don't think it was anything surprising. It's not anything exciting. It's not anything that I would have wanted, but it's business as usual, and we got back to it.
Yeah, it's horrible. Business as usual is terrible. I'm sure. You say you agree with Bruce, but your reasons for agreeing are vastly different, which I find very interesting.
Yeah. So Obama 2.0 is an interesting way of putting it. I was never necessarily a staunch supporter of Obama either. I find both of them, very, very just moderate conservatives, and I wish it was different, but it's not.
Barack Obama and Joe Biden are moderate conservatives.
America's first politicians, right? Come on.
What?
Like,
yeah.
I mean, like people who actually put more effort into improving like the lives of the majority of people in America, right?
That's much too much. That's way too much to ask for, Pax. What are you talking about? Doolittle, what do you think, man? Any final thoughts you want to throw out there?
So I have beef jerky in my mouth.
Understand.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of glad that Biden's not doing very much. I don't see him getting very much done. What he has done hasn't been spectacularly executed. He's reversed a lot of policies that I thought were good for things. He's gotten back into bad deals just because he's politically opposed to the person who got out of them in the first place, which I think is just idiotic. So he's just a generic politician, but fortunately he can't do very much, and he's ineffective. I think that by the end of his term, if things keep going the way that they are, that the U.S. dollar will not be what it was when he took office. People aren't going to be using it as currency anymore. It'll be a completely different world. And they've got to turn the ship around somehow, but I don't think he's going to be able to do it.
Well, I guess we'll see. Dan, are you back?
Oh yes, I am.
Yeah,
Sorry,
please.
guys.
Just final thoughts on. Yeah, we're at the 11th hour here. I just want your final thoughts. If your mind was changed on anything, that's always what I want to hear first. If not, just give us your final thoughts before we head out. Just a little thing.
No, I don't think my mind has changed or anything. I think I just learned that when I say competent, I mean something different than others people say. For me, competence is just the ability to not royally fuck up at every turn.
Okay.
Competence, like a competent driver, still gets into an accident like every 5 years.
I see. I like that analogy, actually. That's a very good analogy. I'm gonna go Kapowski. We already talked to you. That doesn't mean I don't like you. It just means we already talked to you. Mace, what do you think, man? Final thoughts? Were you enlightened by anything today, or what?
No, really.
All right, fair enough, man. Nivek, you have anything for us?
Yeah, he's trying to do the right thing. The stimulus, is an investment. You got two sellouts that aren't going along. The pressure. I see capitalism in both ways. In the person that's a buyer and the seller. It's not just about making much money as possible for your from one point of view. It's about a person wanting the best product in return, and pressure in businesses can be good because it could demand better pay and drive competition to innovate. That could that could be a good way of looking at it. He's just doing the best in what he's got.
I actually do think that Joe Biden is trying. I will say that. I don't see a lot of malice in Joe Biden. I don't think he's like a lot of. I mean, he is a career politician. He's been there since he's 30. But I think he's actually a pretty genuine human being. So I would say that about Joe Biden. Pax, final thoughts, man. Going once. There you go.
Abolish capitalism, anarchy all the way.
Abolish capitalism, also anarchy. I have an article on the War of Ideas about how I think that leftist anarchy is nearly an impossible ideology. So maybe we could talk about that one of these days. All right, it's fun.
Is he serious or joking?
My article.
No, I'm not. I'm serious. I'm not.
Okay, he's not serious. Okay, cool. I can never tell. I can't see your face.
I'm also not an AMPREM, so that rules out schools of thought and anarchism that I don't belong to. So.
Right. Okay. Game over. I guess you have the second to last word. Second only to me, of course, as the God King of this discussion.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think there's a lot of interesting points that we could have gone to with this Biden discussion, but I get that what you want to discuss mainly Biden and his turn. I think
you're you're having some interference that you didn't have earlier.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. It's just bad.
Yeah, I think my headphones are gone. I'll just say it and then the pain will stop. Yeah.
Sure. Press on.
So I'm speaking through the mic of the laptop, which is awful.
Yeah. Just press on.
I think basically the West is eating itself slowly but surely, and Biden losing Afghanistan and Europe losing Afghanistan is just a crumb in that path. I think he also symbolizes lots of the current contradictions that exist in the West. And these are, I think, at the root cause of a lot of the self-defeating strategies that you can find all over Europe now and the US as well. I think we're all too cynical and we find ourselves lost in the middle of talking about talking, and we sort of forgot about what values brought us here, honestly. And that's it, I think.
All right. Thank you. Travis, I'm going to invite you in. I don't know if you're listening. I'll give you the normal 3 count. 1, going twice. Sold, but not to you. It's all right. Okay. That's all I got, everybody. I mean, my take is generally I think he's doing his best. I think that we can't solve all our problems by spending more and more money. I think he's kind of just doing the same kind of thing. I don't know. I don't personally like it. I think I think Obama 2.0 is a very apt description, essentially. So, and I also subscribe to the idea it's a bit too soon to tell. But but thank you for the discussion. This is not a discussion that we can have in most scenarios, but thanks to these servers, we can have free and fair debate. So I appreciate you all coming in and participating. Anybody on YouTube, please subscribe, comment, like, all that good stuff to make sure that platforms like these still exist. And thank you guys. That's all I have. Go ahead and move over to the tavern if you want to have a bit more of a bar fight. But that's it for me. I'm done. So thanks, guys. Later. Anybody on YouTube who wants to join the Discord, it's pretty simple. It should be in the description as far as I'm aware. Thanks everybody for watching. See ya.